Good evening, tribe. Welcome back to The Tome, the new channel in which we flip through the pages of human history and learn about the life and times of some of history's most memorable people. And today we have the amazing yet true story of William Adams, otherwise known as the English Samurai. So, if historical or social content delivered in podcast format is what you enjoy listening to the most, hit the subscribe button, give the video a like, and let me know what you think in the comments section below. Okay, let's go. Adams was born in Gillingham, Kent, in England. When Adams was 12, his father died, and he was apprenticed to shipyard owner Master Nicholas Diggins at Limehouse for the seafaring life. He spent 12 years learning nautical skills such as shipbuilding and astronomy and navigation, and shortly after he joined the Royal Navy. Adams served under Sir Francis Drake, seeing naval service against the Spanish Armada in 1588 as master of a resupply ship. In the same year, he is recorded to have married Mary Hinn in the parish church of St Dunstan's in Stepney. Soon after, Adams became a pilot for the Barbary Company. During this service, Jesuit sources claim that he took part in an expedition to the Arctic which lasted about 2 years. This was in search of the Northeast Passage along the coast of Siberia to the Far East. Attracted by the Dutch trade with India, Adams, then 34 years old, shipped as a pilot major with a fire ship dispatched from the Isles of Texel to the Far East in 1598 by a company of Rotterdam merchants. His brother Thomas accompanied him. The Dutch were allied with England, and as well as being fellow Protestants, they too were also at war with Spain, fighting for their independence. The Adams brothers set sail from Texel on the Hope and joined with the rest of the fleet on the 24th of June. The fleet consisted of the Hope under Admiral Jack Mahu. He died in 1598. He was then succeeded by Simon de Cordes, who died in 1599, and Simon de Cordes Jr. This ship was lost, unfortunately, near the Hawaiian Islands. The Love, or sometimes known as the Charity, which was under Simon de Cordes, second in command, succeeded by Gerrit van Buengen, and finally under Jacob Quakernack. This was the only ship which reached Japan. The Faith, under Gerrit van Bueningen, and in the end Siebold de Weert, the only ship which came back from Rotterdam. The Loyalty, under Geranian van Boerkhout, and finally the Good Tidings, or the Gospel, under Siebold de Weert, and later Dirk Gerrits. After leaving Giori on the 27th of June 1598, the ships sailed to the Channel, but anchored in the Downs till mid-July. When the ships approached the shores of North Africa, Simon de Cordes realised he had been far too generous in the early weeks of the voyage and instituted a so-called bread policy. At the end of August, they landed on Santiago, Cape Verde, off the coast of Africa because of a lack of water and need for fresh fruit. They stayed around 3 weeks in the hope to buy some goats. Near Praia, they succeeded to occupy a Portuguese castle on the top of a hill, but came back without anything substantial. At Brava, Cape Verde, half of the crew of the Hope caught fever there, with most of the men sick, among them Admiral Jacques Mahu. After his death, the leadership of the expedition was taken over by Simon de Cordes, with Van Buengen as Vice Admiral. When finally the Pacific Ocean was reached on the 3rd of September 1599, the ships were caught in a storm and lost sight of each other. The Loyalty and the Believe were driven back into the strait. After more than a year, each ship went its own way. The Geloof returned to Rotterdam in July 1600 with 36 men surviving of the original 109 crew. De Cordes ordered his small fleet to wait 4 weeks for each other on Saint Maria Island in Chile, but some ships missed the island. Adams wrote, quote, "They brought us sheep and potatoes," end quote. From here the story becomes less reliable because of a lack of sources and changes in command. In early November, the Hope landed on Mocha Island, where 27 people were killed by the people of Araucania, including Simon de Cordes. In the account given to Oliver van Noort, it was said that Simon de Cordes was slain at the Punta de Lavapai, but Adams gives Mocha Island as the scene of his death. In fear of the Spaniards, the remaining crew determined to leave the island and set sail across the Pacific. It was the 27th of November 1599 when the two ships sailed westward for Japan. On their way, the two ships made landfall in, quote, certain islands, end quote, where 8 sailors deserted the ships. Later, during the voyage, a typhoon claimed the Hope with all hands in late February 1600. In April 1600, after more than 19 months at sea, a crew of 23 sick and dying men, out of 100 who started the voyage, brought the Lefty to anchor off the island of Kaishuyu, Japan. Its cargo consisted of 11 chests of trade goods, coarse woolen cloth, glass beads, mirrors, and spectacles. Metal tools and weapons, nails, iron, hammers, 19 bronze cannons, 5,000 cannonballs, 500 muskets, 300 chain shot, and 3 chests filled with coats of iron mail. When the 9 surviving crew members were strong enough to stand, they made landfall on the 19th of April off Bungo, present-day Usuki. They were met by Japanese locals and Portuguese Jesuit missionaries, claiming that Adams' ship was a pirate vessel and that the crew should be executed as pirates. The ship was seized and the sickly crew were imprisoned at Osaka Castle on the orders of Tokugawa Ieyasu, the daimyo of Edo and future shogun. The 19 bronze cannons of the Lefty were unloaded and, according to Spanish accounts, later used at the decisive Battle of Sakigara on 21st of October 1600. Adams met Ieyasu in Osaka 3 times between May and June 1600. He was questioned by Ieyasu, then a guardian of the young son of the Taiko Toyotomi Hideyoshi, the ruler who had just died. Adams' knowledge of ships, shipbuilding, and nautical smattering of mathematics appealed to Ieyasu. In 1604, Tokugawa ordered Adams and his companions to help Mukai Shogun, who was the commander-in-chief of the navy of Uraga, to build Japan's first Western-style ship. The sailing ship was built at the harbour of Ito on the east coast of the Izu Peninsula, with carpenters from the harbour supplying the manpower for the construction of an 80-ton vessel. It was used to survey the Japanese coast. The Shogun ordered a larger ship of 120 tons to be built the following year. It was slightly smaller than the Liefde, which was 150 tons. According to Adams, Tokugawa, quote, came aboard to see it, and the sight thereof gave him great content, end quote. In 1610, the 120-ton ship, later named San Buenaventura, was lent to shipwrecked Spanish sailors. They sailed it to New Spain, accompanied by a mission of 22 Japanese led by Tanaka Shosuke. Following the construction, Tokugawa invited Adams to visit his palace whenever he liked, and that, quote, always I must come in his presence, end quote. Other survivors of the left were also rewarded with favours and were allowed to pursue foreign trade. Most of the survivors left Japan in 1605 with the help of the daimyo of Harado, although Adams did not receive permission to leave Japan until 1613. Melchior van Santvoort and Jan Joosten van Lodenstein engaged in trade between Japan and Southeast Asia and reportedly made a fortune. Both of them were reported by Dutch traders as being in Japan as early as 1613, sailing richly cargoed junks. In 1609, Adams contacted the interim governor of the Philippines on behalf of Tokugawa, who wished to establish direct trade contracts with New Spain. Friendly letters were exchanged, officially starting relations between Japan and New Spain. Taking a liking to Adams, the Shogun appointed him as a diplomatic and trade advisor, bestowing great privileges upon him. Ultimately, Adams became his personal advisor on all things related to Western powers and Western civilization. After a few years, Adams replaced the Jesuit Padre Joao Rodriguez as the Shogun's official interpreter. Padre Valentim Carvalho wrote, quote, after he had learned the language, he had access to La Yasu and entered the palace at any time. He also described him as, quote, a great engineer and mathematician, end quote. Adams had a wife, as we mentioned earlier, Mary Hinn, but he also had 2 children in England. But Ieyasu forbade the Englishman to leave Japan. He was presented with 2 swords representing the authority of a samurai. The Shogun decreed that William Adams, the pilot, was dead and that Miura Anjin, a samurai, was born. According to the Shogun, this action, quote, freed, end quote, Adams to serve the shogunate permanently, effectively making Adams' his wife in England a widow. Adams managed to send regular support payments to her, however, this being after 1613 via the English and Dutch companies. Adams was also given the title of Hatamoto, which means bannerman, a high prestige position as a direct retainer in the shogun's court. Adams was given generous revenues, quote, for the services that I have done and do daily, being employed in the Emperor's service. The Emperor has given me a living, end quote. He was granted a fief in Hemji, within the boundaries of present-day Yokosuka City, with 80 or 90 husbandmen, that be my slaves or servants, reads one of his letters. His estate was valued at 250 koku, a koku being a measure of the yearly income of the land in rice, with 1 koku defined as the quantity of rice sufficient to feed 1 person for 1 year. He finally wrote, quote, God hath provided for me after my great misery, end quote, by which he meant the disaster-ridden voyage that had initially brought him all the way to Japan. Adams's estate was located next to the harbour of Uraga, the traditional point of entrance to Edo Bay. There he was recorded as dealing with the cargoes of foreign ships. John Saris related that when he visited Edo in 1613, Adams had resale rights for the cargo of a Spanish ship at anchor in Uraga Bay. Adams's position gave him the means to marry Oyuki, who was the adopted daughter of Magomi Keigu. He was a highway official who was in charge of all the pack horse exchanges on one of the grand imperial roads that led out of Edo. Although Magomi was important, Oyuki was not of noble birth, nor high social standing. Adams may have married from affection rather than for social reasons. Adams and Oyuki had a son, Joseph, and a daughter, Susanna. Adams was constantly travelling for work. Initially, he tried to organise an expedition in search of the Arctic Passage that had so previously eluded him. In 1604, Ieyasu sent the Lefties captain Jacob Quakenake and the ship's treasurer on a Shogun licensed Red Seal ship to Patani in Southeast Asia. He ordered them to contact the Dutch East India Company trading factory, which had just been established in 1602, in order to bring more Western trade to Japan and break the Portuguese monopoly. In 1605, Adams obtained a letter of authorization from Ieyasu, formally inviting the Dutch to trade with Japan. Hampered by conflicts with the Portuguese and limited resources in Asia, the Dutch were not able to send ships to Japan until 1609. Two Dutch ships commanded by Jacques Spex, the Griffin with 19 cannons and the Red Lion with arrows, 400 tons and 26 cannons, were sent from Holland and reached Japan on the 2nd of July 1609. The men of this Dutch expeditionary fleet established a trading base, or quote-unquote factory, on Harado Island. Two Dutch envoys, Poyuk and Van de Broek, were the official bearers of a letter from Prince Maurice of Nassau to the court of Edo. Adams negotiated on behalf of these emissaries. The Dutch obtained free trading rights throughout Japan and to establish a trading factory there. By contrast, the Portuguese were allowed to sell their goods only in Nagasaki at fixed, negotiated prices. After obtaining this trading right through an edict of Tokugawa Ieyasu on 24th of August 1609, the Dutch inaugurated a trading factory in Harado on the 20th of September 1609. The Dutch preserved their quote trade pass end quote in Harado, and then Dejima as a guarantee of their trading rights during the following 2 centuries that they operated in Japan. In 1611, Adams learned of an English settlement in Banten Sultanate, present-day Indonesia. He wrote asking them to convey news of him to his family and friends in England. He invited them to engage in trade with Japan, which, quote, the Hollanders have here an Indies of money, end quote. In 1613, the English captain John Saris arrived at Harado in the ship Clove, intending to establish a trading factory for the British East India Company. The Dutch East India Company already had a major trade post at Harado. In Harado, Adams refused to stay in English quarters, residing instead with a local Japanese magistrate. The English noted that he wore Japanese dress and spoke Japanese fluently. Adams estimated the cargo of the Clove was of little value, essentially broadcloth, tin and cloves. In 1613, the English captain John Saris arrived at Harado in the ship Clove, intending to establish a trading factory for the British East India Company. The Dutch East India Company already had a major trading post in Harado. In Harado, Adams refused to stay in the English quarters, residing instead with a local Japanese magistrate. The English noted that he wore Japanese dress and spoke Japanese fluently. Adams estimated the cargo of the Clove was of little value, essentially broadcloth, tin and cloves, acquired in the Spice Islands, saying that, quote, such things as he had bought were not very vendible, end quote. Adams travelled with Saris to Suraga, where they met with Ieyasu at his principal residence in September. The Englishmen continued to Kamakura, where they visited the noted Kamakura Great Buddha. They continued to Edo, where they met Ieyasu's son Hidetada, who was nominally shogun, although Ieyasu retained most of the decision-making powers. During that meeting, Hidetada gave Saris 2 varnished suits of armour for King James I. As of 2015, one of these suits of armour is housed in the Tower of London, the other is on display in the Royal Armouries Museum in Leeds, England. The suits were made by Iwai Yosimon of Nanbu. They were part of a series of presentation armours of ancient 15th century Do-Maru style. On their return, the English party visited Tokugawa again. He conferred trading privileges to the English by a Red Seal permit, giving them, quote, free licence to abide, sell, buy and barter, end quote, in Japan. The English party returned to Hirado on the 9th of October 1613. At this meeting, Adams asked for and obtained Tokugawa's authorization to return to his home country, but he finally declined Saris's offer to take him back to England, saying, quote, I answered him I had spent in his country many years, though which I was poor and desirous to get something before my return, end quote. His true reasons seem to lie rather with his profound antipathy for Saris. The reason I would not go with him, Adams says, was for diverse injuries done against me, which were things to me very strange and unlooked for. Adams accepted employment with the newly found Hirado Trading Factory, signing a contract on the 24th of November 1613 with the East India Company for the yearly salary of 100 English pounds. This was more than double the regular salary of £40 earned by the other factors at Hirado. Adams had a lead role under Richard Cox, and together with 6 other compatriots, Tempest Peacock, Richard Wickham, William Eaton, Walter Carwarden, Edmund Sayers, and finally William Nelson, in organising this new English settlement. Adams had advised Saris against the choice of Hirado, which was small and far away from the major markets in Osaka and Edo. He had recommended selection of Uraga near Edo for the post, but Saris wanted to keep an eye on the Dutch activities. During the 10-year operations of the East India Company between 1613 and 1623, only 3 English ships after the Clove brought cargo directly from London to Japan. They were invariably described as having poor value on the Japanese market. The only trade which helped support the factory was that organised between Japan and Southeast Asia. This was chiefly Adams selling Chinese goods for Japanese silver. The Portuguese and other Catholic religious orders in Japan considered Adams a rival as an English Protestant. After Adams' power had grown, the Jesuits tried to convert him, then offered to secretly bear him away from Japan on a Portuguese ship. The Jesuits' willingness to disobey the order by Ieyasu, prohibiting Adams from leaving Japan, showed that they feared his growing influence. Catholic priests asserted that he was trying to discredit them. In 1614, Carvalho complained of Adams and other merchants in his annual letter to the Pope, saying that, quote, by false accusations, that's Adams and others, have rendered our preachers such objects of suspicion that he, that's Ieyasu, fears and readily believes that they are rather spies than sowers of the holy faith in his kingdom, end quote. Ieyasu, influenced by Adams' counsel of course, and disturbed by unrest caused by the numerous Catholic converts, expelled the Portuguese Jesuits from Japan in 1614. He demanded that Japanese Catholics abandon their new faith. Adams apparently warned Ieyasu against Spanish approaches as well. After 15 years in Japan, Adams had a difficult time establishing relations with the English arrivals. He initially shunned the company of the newly arrived English sailors in 1613 and could not get on good terms with Saris. But Richard Cox, the head of the Hirado factory, came to appreciate Adams's character and what he had acquired of Japanese self-control. In a letter to the East India Company, Cox wrote, quote, "I find the man tractable, and willing to do your worships the best service he may. I am persuaded I could live with him 7 years before any extraordinary speeches should happen between us." End quote. Adams later engaged in various exploratory and commercial ventures. He tried to organise an expedition to the legendary Northwest Passage from Asia, which would have greatly reduced the sailing distance between Japan and Europe. Ieyasu asked him if, quote, "our countrymen could not find the Northwest Passage," end quote, and Adams contacted the East India Company to organise manpower and supplies. The expedition, however, never got underway. In his later years, Adams worked for the English East India Company. He made a number of trading voyages to Siam in 1616 and Cochin China in 1617 and 1618, sometimes for the English East India Company, sometimes on his own account. He is recorded in Japanese records as being the owner of a Red Seal ship of 500 tons. In 1614, Adams wanted to organise a trade expedition to Siam to bolster the company factory's activities and cash situation. He bought and upgraded a 200-ton Japanese junk for the company, renaming her as Sea Adventure, and hired about 120 Japanese sailors and merchants, as well as several Chinese traders, an Italian and a Castilian trader. The heavily laden ship left in November 1614. The merchants, Richard Wickham and Edmund Sayers of the English factory staff, also joined the voyage. The expedition was to purchase raw silk, Chinese goods, sappan wood, deer skins and ray skins, the latter used for the hilts of Japanese swords. The ship carried 1,250 pounds in silver and 175 pounds of merchandise, that's Indian cottons, Japanese weapons and lacquerware. The party encountered a typhoon near the Raikuku Islands, that's modern Okinawa, and had to stop there to repair from the 27th of December 1614 until May 1615. It returned to Japan in June 1615 without having completed any trade. Adams left Hirado in November 1615 for Ayutthaya in Siam on the refitted Sea Adventure, intent on obtaining sappan wood for resale in Japan. His cargo was chiefly silver, this time 600 pounds, and the Japanese and Indian goods unsold from a previous voyage. He bought vast quantities of the high-profit products. His partners obtained 2 ships in Siam in order to transport everything back to Japan. Adams sailed in the Sea Adventure to Japan with 143 tons of sappan wood and 3,700 deer skins, returning to Hirado in just 47 days. Sayers, on a hired Chinese junk, reached Hirado in October 1616 with 44 tons of sappan wood. The third ship, a Japanese junk, brought 4,560 deerskins to Nagasaki, arriving in June 1617 after the monsoon. Less than a week before Adams's return, Ieyasu unfortunately died. Adams accompanied Cox and Eaton to court to offer company presents to the new ruler, Hidetada. Although Ieyasu's death seems to have weakened Adams's political influence, Hidetada agreed to maintain the English trading privileges. He also issued a new Red Seal permit to Adams, which allowed him to continue trade activities overseas under the shogun's protection. His position as Hatamoto was also renewed. In March 1617, Adams set sail for Cochin China, having purchased the junk Sayers had brought from Siam and renamed it the Gift of God. He intended to find two English factors, Tempest Peacock and Walter Carwarden, who had departed from Hirado 2 years before to explore commercial opportunities on the first voyage to Southeast Asia by the Hirado English factory. Adams learned in Cochin China that Peacock had been plied with drink and killed for his silver. Carwarden, who was waiting in a boat downstream, realised that Peacock had been killed and hastily tried to reach his ship. His boat, however, was overturned and he drowned. In 1618, Adams is recorded as having organised his very last Red Seal trade expedition to Cochin China and Tonkin, that's modern-day Vietnam. The last expedition of the English Hirado factory to Southeast Asia. The ship, a chartered Chinese junk, left Hirado on 11th of March 1618, but met with bad weather that forced it to stop at Oshima in the northern Ryukyus. The ship sailed back to Hirado in May. Those expeditions to Southeast Asia helped the English factory survive for some time. During that period, Sappan wood resold in Japan with a 200% profit margin, until the factory fell into bankruptcy due to high expenditures. William married Mary Hinn, as we mentioned at the beginning, at St Dunstan's in Stepney on August 20th, 1589, and they had 2 children. A son named John and a daughter named Deliverance. He sent letters to Mary from Japan and sent money to her via the East India Company. He also had a Japanese wife, Oyuki, and they had a son named Joseph and a daughter named Susanna. It is rumoured that William had a child born in Hirado with yet another Japanese woman. Adams himself died at Hirado, north of Nagasaki, on the 16th of May 1620 at the comparatively old age of 55. He was buried in Nagasaki, where his grave marker may still be seen. In 2019, Japanese archaeologists announced the discovery of bones at the site believed to be those of Adams. His grave site is next to a memorial to Saint Francis Xavier. In his will, he left his townhouse in Edu, his fief in Hemi, and £500 to be divided between every member of his family in England, but also his family members in Japan. Cox wrote, quote, "I cannot but be sorrowful for the loss of such a man as Captain William Adams. He having been in such favour with 2 emperors of Japan as never any Christian in these parts of the world before." End quote. Cox remained in contact with Adams' Japanese family, sending gifts. In March 1622, he offered silks to Joseph and Susanna. On the Christmas after Adams's death, Cox gave Joseph his father's sword and dagger. Cox records that Hidetada transferred the lordship from William Adams to his son Joseph Adams, with the attendant rights to the estate at Hemi. Adams's son kept the title of Miura Anjin and was a successful trader until Japan closed against foreign trading in 1635. He then disappeared from historical records. Cox administered Adams's trading rights, the Shuinjo, for the benefit of Adams's children, Joseph and Susanna. He carried this out conscientiously. In 1623, 3 years after Adams's death, the unprofitable English trading factory was dissolved by the East India Company. The Dutch traded on Adams's children's behalf via the Red Seal ships. By 1629, only 2 of Adams's shipmates from 1600 survived in Japan, Melchior van Santvoort and Vincent Romein. Both lived privately in Nagasaki. Adams has a second memorial monument at the location of his residence in Hemi. And finally, we will end with the honours for Adams. These are the things that he was remembered for. A town in Edo, that's modern Tokyo, Anjincho in modern day Nihobashi, was named for Adams, who had a house there. He is annually celebrated each year on the 15th of June. A village and a railroad station in his fiefdom, Hemi, in modern day Yokosuka, were named for him. In the city of Ito, Shizuoka, the Miura Anjin Festival is held annually on the 10th of August. On the seafront at Ito is a monument to Adams. Next to it is a plaque inscribed with Edmund Blunden's poem To the Citizens of Ito, which commemorates Adams's achievements. Adams's birth town in Gillingham has held a Will Adams Festival every September since the year 2000. Since the late 20th century, both Ito and Yokosuka have become sister cities with Gillingham. A monument to Adams was installed in Watling Street in Gillingham, that's in Kent, opposite Darland Avenue. The monument was unveiled on 11th of May 1934 by His Excellency Tsuneo Matsudaira, Japanese ambassador to the court of St. James. A roundabout was named after Adams, with a Japanese theme just along from the Gillingham Monument to Adams, with 2 roads named after the Gillingham sister cities, Ito Way and Yokosuka Way. And finally, the townhouse of William Adams still exists in Hirado today. It is now, believe it or not, a sweet shop. And that brings an end to the life and times of one William Adams, Captain William Adams, to give him his full shtick. So, I hope you enjoyed that video as much as I enjoyed making it. As I said, with each video, I am trying to increase my production value so I can bring a more polished product to you guys. I'm sorry if my voice sounds stupid. I know a couple of people have said that. That's one thing I can't change, my voice, but I can change the production value of my videos, and hopefully you'll stick around to enjoy them along with me. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one, ladies and gentlemen. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and maybe share it around. Certainly let me know what you think in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next one.